Nigeria's track and field scene is hemorrhaging talent, or rather is losing talent or bleeding talent from systemic underfunding and administrative disarray to frequent athlete defections. The nation's sports infrastructure is struggling to retain its stars. A case in point is world-class sprinter Favour Ofili, whose switch of allegiance to the Turkey, at least temporarily, highlights the frustrations of athletes seeking better support and exposure. Now, despite assurances she remains Nigerian, many see her move as a sign of deeper cracks in the system. Support structures are woefully inadequate. Coaches go unpaid, facilities fall into disrepair, and bureaucratic areas have also stalled athletes' development as well. Now, this has forced several athletes motivated by career stability, sponsorship, and competitive opportunity to seek affiliations elsewhere. Ofili's case, including her provisional registration with Turkey, is merely the tip of the iceberg in a troubling exodus that begs urgent reform.
Begs urgent reform, indeed it does. So Nigeria is losing top-tier talent due to chronic neglect, poor funding, and administrative failure. Favour Ofili's temporary allegiance shines a spotlight on the desperation of athletes facing limited pathways to realize their potential. Now, these are national embarrassments we can no longer ignore. Here with us to explore the deeper meaning is Mr. China Acheru, seasoned sports broadcast journalist here with us. Welcome, China. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. And also with us is Deji Ogeyingbo, country manager, Making of Champions. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Welcome. Let's talk Favour. Not that kind, Favour Ofili this time. It's a very interesting case because even from before now, months from before, she had been telling how discouraged she was at the Nigerian system, her missing out of opportunities that could have propelled her in the rankings. But now she has totally switched sides to Kiev, not even an African country, not one where she can even say her skin color is actually quite the same. But how do you contextualize the impact of her allegiance move within the broader decline of Nigeria's athletics? Let's start with you, China.
Hey, listen, Favour has decided to leave and compete for another country, pledge allegiance to another country. She was our best, or one of our best, and we'll surely miss her. But, you know, these are deep-rooted issues, and it goes beyond Favour Ofili and athletics. The footballers are leaving, the doctors are leaving, the engineers are leaving, the artisans are leaving. So it tells you that we need to fix our country. But let's narrow it down to Favour. Are you going to blame her, really? Are you really going to blame her? Like someone said, 2 Olympic cycles gone will mean 8 years gone in an athlete's life. So we need to ask ourselves some tough questions. Why do we do what we do? Why do we choose to run sport? Who have we picked to run our sports for us? On what kind of documentation are they running sports? Right? Do we have a plan for our sport? What do we hope to achieve now, in 3 months, in 1 year, in 5 years, in 10 years? Do we have that kind of blueprint? The answer is simply no. And, you know, as much as I feel for Favour, because I would say she has suffered, and again, as much as I feel for Nigerian athletics because we are losing someone great, Favour was not the first, and she will not be the last. Many more will leave until we begin to look at ourselves in the face and ask ourselves some tough questions. Then we can start from the beginning. We act like we've not done it before. Start from the beginning. We know many years back, around Sydney Olympics, it was Daniel Igali that dumped Nigeria for Canada. He was a wrestler. Then, of course, we know the case of Gloria Lozier. We know the case of Francis Obikwelu. So it goes way beyond Favour. And there will be more. I mean, in recent years, a few more have gone to the Middle East too. So the truth is that as we talk about the Favour Ofili case, let those that run our sport don't look at Favour as one more object from the conveyor belt. Because the truth is that conveyor belt will keep turning around and turning new athletes. So people, they don't really care if in the minds of the administrators, if Favour leaves, we are going to get someone else. After all, before people, we are running, we are jumping, we are throwing. So if we take away that mindset, we don't ask ourselves, how do we, ensure that those that represent Nigeria are given let's say, a clean deal? If we can ask those questions and answer them successfully, then we people lead, and we can be on the path to rebranding Nigerian sport.
Thank you very much, China. Deji, if you're with us, I'm wondering in your what you think about Nigeria Sports Administration. What are the core problems that you think always lead us here, where athletes become disillusioned and eventually say, oh, I'm switching nationality? What exactly in our sports governance is the problem?
Well, thank you for having me. I mean, I think it's deep-rooted, like China said, and I mean, as a developing nation, sports is always a reflection of the country itself. Unlike entertainment, where independently you could see artists emerge without self-reliance on the government and become global superstars. With sports, it's almost impossible. And for a sport like track that is heavily dependent on the federation for athletes to succeed. So in track and field, unlike what you've got in football, where athletes can play for club sides and earn thousands of dollars or thousands of pounds, and it's almost negligible for them playing for the national team, even though sometimes it's important. It's completely different from track, where the World Championships and the Olympics are the biggest for any track and field athletes. So very few of them sign shoe contracts. Favour Ofili in recent time is one of the few athletes who have signed a shoe contract with Adidas. Favour Ofili, Udodio Omozurike, Toby Amuso. That's some of the few in the last 2 to 3 years. And those contracts are heavily dependent on competing at the World Championships and at the Olympics, right? So Ofili first made her debut for Nigeria at the age of 16 at the World Championship in Doha before she moved to college in Louisiana State University, and been dominating the college space there. And you could know then that she was already going to be a superstar. But I mean, her contract with Adidas was obviously heavily dependent on going to the World Championships, winning medals there, competing at the Olympics. And I mean, after what in 2021, where she didn't have the required out of competition test and she couldn't compete. I mean, she hadn't turned pro then, but I reckon from Paris last year, it was the straw that broke the final, that broke the camel's back, right? I mean, I've been heavily involved in track and field, also involved in federation, and you see some of the lacklusterness. I work with some of these athletes, and you also see the frustration in their eyes. I'm tempted not to go into details, but it's just lack of proper organization that stems from inadequacy and the fact that we don't we reward or we don't put our foot down when someone has some serious issues. So at the World Championships, World Indoor Championship last year in Glasgow, for example, I was there, and there were issues of not even having the kits ready yet, and athletes were there. Right now, I'm even surprised there were no more athletes top athletes that have not even switched allegiance. So, I mean, with Ofili on her part, after missing the Paris Olympics, they set up a committee, missing the 100 meters at the Paris Olympics, they set up a committee to look into it. And I mean, there were recommendations made to give us some money as compensation, right? But there's no doubt that, I mean, the missing the 100 meters would have perhaps influenced some money that would have been made via a contract with Adidas. And that was the final straw for her. And we are literally about to lose one of the top elite athletes for Nigeria. And they don't come easily, right? After America or Jamaica, Nigeria is up there when it comes to track and field. In terms of numbers, we have the most of 10 seconds in the men's 100 meters after Jamaica and the United States, right? So Ofili, it's not just about the fact that it's going to be a reflection of who we are as a country. Jamaica has the same issue, right, where they are neglecting their field athletes. A couple of them have also switched allegiance to Turkey. They're also a developing nation, but their track athletes are not doing the same, right? So, but what you find in the last 7 days, this issue has gotten to the parliament in Jamaica. They're looking for ways and reforms to ensure that this doesn't happen to their subsequent field athletes. But this is less than 4 or 5 days where we had the issue of this, of the rumors of Ofili switching. Nothing has been done, all just from a report or from a press release from the president of the federation. That's the AFN. Nothing yet. Right. It's going to be swept under the carpet, and like China said, it's still the same revolving door where they would come out and say, oh, we're going to get better legs than Ofili, and it's just going to be a circle.
Right. I have to come and ask about, our hyper-focus whether as a country or as the ministry, so of the Federation, Sporting Federation of Nigeria. Do you also think that one of the things that have fueled this porting syndrome, as we've seen in the sports sector, is simply because of the hyper-focus on football as opposed to track and field or any other forms of sports? Because in the Paris Olympics, what we saw was other Nigerians not only participating in track and field, but also mostly on the field. So we had the shot put, both female and male, and I've forgotten their names now. We're going to reel those names shortly. But we see them in other forms of football, particularly field and track as well. And so I want us to talk about a hyper-focus on our sporting federation on football as opposed to other sports. Does this fuel the porting syndrome that we're seeing? China, let me start with you.
No, here's the thing. For many years of my life, I've been part of this argument of a lot of our sports ministers being football ministers, a lot of our sports commission.
As we try to fix China, we've lost China there. Let me come to you there, the MD of Making Champions. Just have your own take, Deji. Deji, please go ahead with your take as we try to fix China's audio. Oh, China, I understand you're back now.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
Hang on a second, Deji. China is back. China, please go ahead.
Okay, yeah, but this issue that happens in athletics also happens in football. Yes, there's more focus on football by the sports officials, but it happens. Nigeria is a nation that dwells in winning and not preparation. You see a football team qualifies for the AFCON or the World Cup, and the next thing the NFL president is saying is, we are there to win it. But he had no idea how they qualified. You see a Nigerian club win the Nigerian league, and the next thing the state governor says that we're going to win the CAF Champions League. You have no idea how the players are training. So it's the same thing. They are focused on the win at the end of the day and not the preparation. So, yes, we focus on football, but it's the same scenario. It's the same people. So what I think that we should be doing at the top is, as much as you want to focus on winning, which is good, I mean, that's like the icing on the cake that you win, but it's a process from discovering an athlete to preparing that athlete. For the athletes, the track and field people, they talk about training grants. Training grants are not to be given a week to the Olympic Games or a week to the All Africa Games. Then it's not training grants. Training grants should come in good time. 3 years, 4 years before the Olympic Games. So these are things, I'm sure that you can speak more on that, but it's about us having the wrong focus. Our focus is on the prize, not on the pathway to the prize.
Right.
So we should be more focused on the pathway to the prize, which is discovering the athletes, training them, preparing them for competition, and then winning the competition.
Right. Deji, let me come to you and just add another layer as you comment on my last question. And as we're focusing on the price, let's also talk about the continual rot of our sporting federation in its entirety, whether it's the stadiums, whether it's the athletes' villages, whether it's preparation itself or coaching. We have seen it continue to decline and deteriorate. Do you also think that that mentality of winning as opposed to preparation is what's also fueling the continual rot of our sporting sector?
Yeah, absolutely. I do agree. It's paper over crack, right? It's always been about the destination, not the journey for Nigerians. And that kind of gives us that self-belief that the talent alone is enough. Let's not deceive ourselves, right? We've got the talent, we can discover them, but we don't have the human resource and the manpower to be able to train them and develop them to world-class level, right? And these are all varying based on the sport itself. For track and field, for example, minimum in an Olympic cycle or in a year, for example, you would need to give, let me start with a track athlete. You'll be spending nothing less than $50,000 to perhaps get to an elite level. Sticking with someone like Favour Ofili, who is arguably one of the top 100 and 200 meters runner in the world, in the top 10, in both events. You're talking about supplements, you're talking about paying our coaches in LSU, Dennis Shaver, you're talking about travel for competition, travel for the national trials. Like, you are literally touching $50,000 every year, and that's for an elite athlete. In the span of 4 years, over the course of the Olympics, you're looking at $200,000, right? Okay. And obviously, this is not meant to be on the government alone, and that's where we don't even see sport as a proper business, where the government should lay the foundation, but it should be a bedrock for other sporting or other brands to be able to focus on or also invest in. But because the government don't lay the foundation, it pushes them away. Mm-hmm. So you see a lot of them perhaps go or tilt towards the entertainment sector, where they can still get value for money, but not necessarily in sports. So we just go round in circle. I mean, I could give you a summary of the Nigerian sports space, where in football, for example, it's tilting towards players from club sides. In track and field, they just, okay, we host international trials, and hoping that the American system train the athletes for them and train it out for Nigeria to make money, or perhaps compete at the Olympic Games or the World Championships. Now, we saw it with Toby too.
All right, Deji, I would let you finish, but we are almost out of time, and I really want to get this question in. Let's talk about approvals. We also know that there was an instance where we had to wait for an approval, an international approval for Favour Ofili's switch to Turkey. How does it work exactly if an athlete says they're switching allegiance when it comes to nationality? What do they need to do? What approvals do they need to get? And what responsibility do they owe to their country of origin, in this case Nigeria? Deji, please. And if you can summarize it.
So it's always been evolving, but from the last 6 years, world athletics are trampled upon athletes just switching allegiance. It's not just Nigeria alone. It happens with Cubans, the Portuguese. Now, what happens is you have to submit a petition to your country's federation. That's, in this case, the Athletics Federation of Nigeria. After that, they look at the case and look at the country you want to switch in. If they accept it, you have a 3-year window period where you would wait. You wouldn't compete at all at any World Championship or at any Olympic Games within that cycle. So in Favour's case now, we heard she submitted the switch of allegiance in the last week of May. She would literally have to wait for 2026, 2027, and 2028. So it means she will miss the World Championships in Tokyo this year, miss the Beijing World Championships in 2027, and potentially the LA 2028 Games. But we also hear reports that you can also send an appeal to the Athletics Integrity Unit, which is an independent body that is self-funded, and they look into the violations and issues of switching of allegiance, where Ofili is making a case to say that she has suffered from Nigeria and her career by not competing at 2 Olympics, well, 1.5 in this case,